What happens when a music icon sits down for what should be a simple promotional interview and it turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? What you're about to see is a conversation that went completely off the rails, and by the end, Gwen Stefani had had enough. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about what went down here, because this is wild. So Gwen Stefani is on The View, right? She's there to talk about her new music, her Vegas residency, maybe some fun stories about life with Blake Shelton. Standard stuff. The panel is all smiles at first. Whoopi welcomes her. The audience is excited, and Gwen seems relaxed. She's talking about her creative process, how she's been writing new material, and everyone seems engaged. But then Joy Behar jumps in, and you can immediately sense a shift in energy. Joy starts with what seems like a compliment. She says, "Gwen, I've always admired your ability to reinvent yourself. You've gone from ska punk to pop princess to country adjacent. It's impressive." But then she pauses, and you can see Gwen's smile freeze just a little bit. Joy continues, "But I have to ask, and I think a lot of people are wondering this, at what point does reinvention become, I don't know, losing your identity? Like, who is the real Gwen Stefani?" The studio gets quiet. You can hear it. Gwen laughs, but it's not a comfortable laugh. She says, "Well, Joy, I think the real Gwen Stefani is someone who's not afraid to evolve and try new things. I've never been someone who wants to be put in a box." Joy nods, but she's not done. She says, Sure, but evolution usually has some kind of core, doesn't it? I mean, you went from singing about being just a girl to singing about tractors and pickup trucks. That's not evolution. That's a complete costume change." The other hosts look uncomfortable. Whoopi tries to interject with something light, but Joy is locked in now. Gwen shifts in her seat, and you can see her trying to stay composed. She says, "I don't sing about tractors, Joy, and I think it's pretty reductive to say that embracing different musical styles is wearing a costume. I've always made music that feels authentic to where I am in my life." Joy leans forward, and here's where it really starts to heat up. She says, "But that's just it, Gwen. Is it authentic, or is it convenient? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you changed your whole vibe to match whoever you're dating. When you were with Tony, it was rock and punk. Now with Blake, it's all country and Americana. Do you see why people might question that?" Gwen's face changes. The smile is gone. She says, "Joy, I think you're confusing artistic collaboration with losing myself. Blake and I share a love of music, and yes, we've influenced each other. That's what happens in any relationship. But to suggest that I've abandoned who I am is not only wrong, it's kind of insulting." Joy doesn't back down. She says, "I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to understand. Because when you look at your career trajectory, it does seem like you mold yourself to fit whatever's popular or whatever's happening in your personal life. And I think that's a valid observation." Gwen's voice gets firmer. She says, "Valid to who, Joy? To you? Because I can tell you right now, the people who actually know me, who've worked with me, who've listened to my music over the past 30 years, they know exactly who I am. I don't need to prove my authenticity to anyone, especially not based on some surface-level analysis of my relationships." The tension is palpable now. Sunny Hostin tries to redirect the conversation, asking Gwen about her Vegas show, but Joy cuts back in. She says, "Look, I think we're all just saying that women in the industry often feel pressure to change themselves, and maybe you've felt that pressure too. There's no shame in admitting that." And this is where Gwen really pushes back. She says, "Joy, you're putting words in my mouth. I haven't felt pressure to change myself. I've felt freedom to explore different parts of my creativity. And honestly, I find it really frustrating that every time a woman artist tries something new, there's this narrative that she's either lost or desperate or trying to please someone else. Why can't I just be an artist who loves making different kinds of music? Joy responds, because artists usually have a point of view, Gwen. They have something to say. And when you're constantly changing genres and styles, it makes people wonder if you actually have a point of view or if you're just chasing trends. Gwen's eyes narrow. She says, I've been in this industry longer than most people at this table have been in television, Joy. I've had #1 hits across multiple genres. I've built brands. I've influenced fashion. I've created art that has meant something to millions of people. So when you sit there and question whether I have a point of view, it honestly just sounds like you haven't been paying attention. The audience lets out a collective, ooh. Joy looks taken aback but tries to recover. She says, I've been paying attention, Gwen. That's why I'm asking these questions. I'm a fan, believe it or not, but being a fan doesn't mean I can't be critical. And I think a lot of your fans have noticed this shift, and they're curious about it. Gwen takes a breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. She says, Okay, let me be really clear about something. My fans, the actual people who support my music and come to my shows, they appreciate that I don't limit myself. They appreciate that I'm willing to take risks and collaborate with artists from different worlds. What they don't appreciate, and what I don't appreciate, is this idea that a woman can't have a multifaceted career without being accused of being fake or calculated. Joy shoots back, but it's not just about being a woman, Gwen. Men get criticized for this too. If Blake Shelton suddenly started making ska punk music, people would absolutely call that out. Gwen actually laughs at this, but it's a sharp laugh. She says, Joy, Blake is a coach on a show where he literally works with artists across every genre. He's collaborated with pop artists, rock artists, you name it, but nobody questions his authenticity because he's a man. When he does it, it's being open-minded. When I do it, I'm apparently lost and looking for myself. Joy tries to interrupt, but Gwen keeps going. She says, and you know what? Even if I was influenced by my relationship, even if falling in love with someone opened me up to new sounds and new experiences, why is that a bad thing? Why is that something to be criticized? Love changes people. It opens doors. It makes you see the world differently. I'm not ashamed of that. Joy responds, I'm not saying you should be ashamed. I'm saying that as a public figure, as someone who's held up as this icon of independence and girl power, it sends a complicated message when you seem to transform based on who you're with. And now Gwen is visibly frustrated. She says, Joy, you need to stop. You keep saying, I seem to transform, like you actually know me, like you're in the studio with me, like you're in my head when I'm writing songs. You don't know my process. You don't know what inspires me. You're making assumptions based on tabloid narratives, and it's not fair. The other hosts are clearly uncomfortable. Sarah Haynes tries to change the subject, mentioning Gwen's fashion line, but Joy isn't finished. She says, Gwen, I think you're being defensive because there's some truth to what I'm saying, and that's okay. We all adapt and change. But when you're as famous as you are, people are going to analyze those changes. Gwen's jaw tightens. She says, There's a difference between analyzing and being condescending, Joy. And right now, you're being condescending. You're sitting here acting like you've figured me out based on what? Some articles you read? Some gossip? I came here to talk about my music, and instead, I'm being psychoanalyzed by someone who doesn't know the first thing about my life. Joy's tone shifts, getting more defensive herself. She says, I'm a journalist, Gwen. I ask tough questions. That's my job. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The air in the studio shifts again. You can feel it. Gwen stares at Joy for a moment, and then she says, very calmly, I've done hundreds of interviews, Joy. I can handle tough questions. What I can't handle is disrespect disguised as journalism. Joy looks stunned for a second, but then she fires back. She says, disrespect? I'm asking you questions that your fans want answered. If you think that's disrespectful, then maybe you're just not used to people challenging you anymore. Maybe everyone around you just tells you what you want to hear. Gwen's face flushes. She says, "You don't know anything about the people around me, Joy. And you know what? This isn't challenging me. Challenging me would be asking about my creative process, about the choices I make in the studio, about how I balance being a mother and an artist. What you're doing is trying to create drama by implying that I'm some kind of chameleon who doesn't have a backbone." Joy shakes her head. She says, "I never said you don't have a backbone. I said your image changes dramatically depending on your circumstances. Those are two different things, Gwen." Gwen leans forward now, her voice steady but intense. She says, "No, Joy, what you're saying is that I'm not authentic. You're saying that my choices aren't real, that they're calculated or influenced by men in my life, and that is absolutely saying I don't have a backbone. You're just using prettier words to say it." Whoopi finally manages to jump in. She says, "Okay, ladies, I think we're getting a little heated here. Let's take a breath and maybe, Gwen, you can tell us about what fans can expect from your new album." But Joy isn't letting it go. She says, "Whoopi, I think this is an important conversation. Women should be able to discuss these things without shutting down." Gwen turns to Joy with this look of disbelief. She says, "I'm not shutting down anything. I'm defending myself against accusations that are based on nothing but your personal interpretation of my career. There's a huge difference." Joy says, "They're not accusations, Gwen. They're observations. And I'm not the only one making them. Go online, read the comments, read the think pieces. People have noticed." And this is where Gwen really lets loose. She says, "Oh, so now we're basing journalism on internet comments? That's your standard? Because if we're going by that metric, Joy, I could pull up thousands of comments about you too. Should we talk about those?" The audience gasps. You can hear it ripple through the studio. Joy's expression hardens. She says, "This isn't about me, Gwen. I'm not the one being interviewed here." Gwen says, "No, but you're the one making judgments. You're the one acting like you have some moral high ground to question my integrity. So maybe we should talk about the fact that you're using your platform to tear down another woman under the guise of asking tough questions." Joy's voice rises. She says, "I am not tearing you down. I'm having a conversation about celebrity culture and authenticity. If you're taking it personally, that's on you." Gwen's laugh is bitter now. She says, "How else am I supposed to take it, Joy? You've spent the last 10 minutes telling me, to my face, that I'm fake, that I change myself for men, that I don't have a point of view. Those are personal attacks, whether you want to admit it or not." Joy jumps back in. She says, "Gwen, you're being way too sensitive about this. If you can't take criticism, if you can't handle people questioning your choices, then maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye." The studio goes quiet again. Gwen stares at Joy, and you can see her processing what was just said. Then she says, very quietly, "Excuse me?" Joy doubles down. She says, "I'm just saying, if you're going to be a celebrity, if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to expect that people are going to have opinions. You have to develop thicker skin." Gwen's voice is tight now. She says, "Joy, I've been in the public eye for 30 years. I have thick skin. What I don't have tolerance for is someone sitting across from me pretending to have a substantive conversation when really they're just being needlessly critical and condescending." Joy looks offended. She says, "Cruel? I'm being cruel? Gwen, you're being dramatic. I asked you some questions about your career choices. That's it. If you think that's cruel, I don't know what to tell you." Gwen stands up slightly in her seat, and everyone notices. She says, "You've called me inauthentic. You've said I don't have a point of view. You've implied that I'm controlled by the men I date. And now you're telling me I'm too sensitive and shouldn't be in the public eye if I can't handle it. And you're calling me dramatic?" Joy says, "Yes, I am, because you're making this into something it's not. This is a talk show, Gwen. We have conversations. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. That's television. Gwen shakes her head slowly. She says, no, Joy. Conversations go both ways. Conversations involve listening and respect. What you've been doing is lecturing me about my own life, my own career, my own choices, as if you have any authority to do so. You don't. Sunny tries to step in. She says, maybe we can all acknowledge that there are different perspectives here and both of you have valid points. Gwen, you feel like your artistic evolution is genuine, and Joy, you're raising questions about how celebrity culture works. Both of those things can be true. Gwen looks at Sunny and says, Sunny, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't about different perspectives. This is about respect, and I don't feel respected right now. Joy throws her hands up. She says, oh my God, Gwen, nobody is attacking you. You came on a talk show where we discuss things. Sometimes those discussions get real. If you can't handle real discussions, then I don't know why you agreed to come here. And this is the moment where you can see Gwen has had enough. Her whole demeanor changes. She says, you know what, Joy? You're right. I don't know why I agreed to come here. I thought I was coming to have a conversation about my music, about my art. Instead, I've spent the entire time defending myself against baseless accusations. Joy says, they're not baseless, Gwen. I've given you specific examples. Gwen cuts her off. She says, no, you've given me your interpretation through a cynical lens. You've decided that because I've explored different genres and fell in love with someone from a different musical world, that must mean I'm fake or desperate. You've decided that based on your own biases. Joy's voice gets louder. She says, my biases? What biases? The facts are that your whole aesthetic changed when you got with Blake. That's not bias. That's observation. Gwen fires back. And my observation is that you have a problem with women who don't fit into neat little boxes. I'm not that girl anymore, Joy. I'm a woman who's lived a full life, who's experienced heartbreak and joy and motherhood and love. Yes, those experiences change you. They change your music, your perspective. But that doesn't make me fake. It makes me human. Joy says, I never said you weren't human, Gwen. Stop twisting my words. Gwen's voice rises now. She says, I'm not twisting anything. I'm responding to exactly what you've said to me. You've questioned my authenticity, my integrity, and my independence. Those are your words, Joy, not mine. Whoopi tries to intervene. She says, okay, I think we need to move on. This has gotten way too heated. But Joy can't let it go. She says, I'm hearing her fine, Whoopi. She's just not liking what I have to say. But I'm not going to apologize for asking questions that need to be asked. Gwen turns to Whoopi, ignoring Joy completely now. She says, Whoopi, with all due respect to you and everyone else at this table, I don't think I should continue with this interview. I came here in good faith, and I've been met with nothing but hostility. Joy scoffs. She says, hostility? Now you're really being dramatic, Gwen. Gwen finally turns back to Joy, and her voice is ice cold. She says, Joy, you have been hostile. You've been dismissive. You've been condescending, and you've been rude. And I'm done. I'm done trying to explain myself to someone who clearly has already made up their mind about who I am. Joy says, fine. If you want to leave, leave. But don't act like you're some victim here. You're a millionaire celebrity who can't handle a few tough questions. Gwen stands up fully now, and the audience goes completely silent. She says, no, Joy. What this really is a woman who has worked her entire life to build a career, to create art, to stay true to herself, being told by another woman that none of that matters. And I refuse to sit here and be disrespected like this. She starts removing her microphone. Ana Navarro says, Gwen, please, maybe we can just take a breath and start over. Gwen looks at Ana with this sad expression. She says, Ana, I appreciate that. But I think we're past the point of starting over. This conversation has been disrespectful from the beginning. Joy says, you can't handle any pushback. You can't handle anyone challenging your narrative, so you're just going to walk away. That's convenient. Gwen stops and looks directly at Joy. She says, I'm not walking away because I can't handle pushback, Joy. I'm walking away because there's a difference between pushback and personal attacks. And you've crossed that line multiple times. Joy says, I haven't been mean-spirited. I've been honest. Maybe you're just not used to honesty anymore. Gwen's eyes flash. She says, don't you dare question my relationship with honesty. I've been honest my entire career. I've written songs about my pain, my mistakes, my vulnerabilities. So when you act like I'm some fragile flower who can't handle the truth, you're not being honest. You're being cruel. Joy stands up too now. She says, I'm not being cruel, Gwen. I'm being a journalist. And if you can't see the difference, that's your problem. Gwen finishes unhooking her microphone and places it on the table. She says, you know what the difference is between a journalist and a bully, Joy? A journalist seeks to understand. A bully seeks to tear down. And today, you've been a bully. The audience gasps. Joy's face turns red. She says, how dare you call me a bully? I have spent my entire career standing up for women. And you're going to call me a bully because I asked you some hard questions? Gwen says, you can stand up for women in general and still tear down individual women, Joy. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Whoopi stands up now too. She says, okay, everyone needs to calm down. Gwen, I'm sorry you feel disrespected. Joy, I think maybe we need to acknowledge that this conversation went in a direction that wasn't productive. Joy turns to Whoopi. She says, I asked legitimate questions and Gwen couldn't handle them. That's not my fault. Gwen looks at Joy one more time. She says, I hope one day you understand the difference between asking tough questions and attacking someone's character. Because until you do, you're going to keep pushing people too far. Joy says, I'm not the one who pushed anything. You're the one walking off a live television show because you got your feelings hurt. Gwen picks up her purse. She says, no, Joy. I'm walking off because I value myself too much to sit here and be disrespected by someone who thinks being provocative is the same thing as being insightful. She turns to the rest of the panel. She says, Whoopi, Sunny, Anna, Sarah, I'm sorry it ended like this, but I can't continue this interview. Whoopi nods, looking genuinely upset. She says, we understand, Gwen. Joy says, so now everyone's apologizing to her? She's the one who couldn't handle a simple conversation. Gwen stops and turns back. She says, Joy, it wasn't a simple conversation. It was an interrogation designed to make me look bad. And the fact that you can't see that tells me everything I need to know. Joy says, fine, leave then. Everyone watching knows this is a celebrity throwing a tantrum on live television. Gwen's voice is completely steady now. She says, no, Joy. Everyone watching is seeing a woman stand up for herself when another woman tried to tear her down. And I'm okay with that. I'd rather walk away from disrespect than sit there and take it just to be polite. And with that, Gwen walks off the set. You can hear her heels clicking as she exits. The camera stays on the panel, and the other hosts look absolutely shocked. Joy sits back down, arms crossed, looking defiant. Whoopi looks at the camera and says, we're going to take a quick break. But you can tell from everyone's faces that nobody knows how to recover from what just happened. This went from a routine celebrity interview to one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. So what do you think? Was Gwen right to walk off? Or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. What's your take on this whole situation?